All right, we do want to keep you aware of other developments this week. We've not forgotten that, obviously, that there were some very big developments this week, including along the border where the administration was crowing about some numbers that show those migrants coming from countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela. Well, those cases dropped prohibitively, about 97%, down to a 7-day average of about 115 in the latest period in January versus obviously 3,367 in the last 7-day average in December. Now, what that does not include, though, are all those from all countries, better than 130. And there the numbers are much more numbing, and about north of 250,000 so-called gotaways, or those apprehended at the border, to say nothing of those who were never captured, something that I raised with the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, earlier this week.
You're a very informed person, and were misled by the president. The average American is completely misled by the president, who I think purposefully issued misleading information to make it look to the public like there was some decrease on the border. He's wrong for two reasons, one of which you pointed out, and that is they're talking about these 4 different countries. Americans need to know there are people coming across the border from more than 140 different countries. And so he's admitting a large number of people coming from across the entire world. Second thing, as was reported and is a fact, and that is this time of year is the lowest time of year for border crossings. And so this is just seasonal. And if nothing else happens, there will be the natural increase in February and March, escalating all through the summertime. But then to add to this, Biden's new border policy is actually going to be attracting even more people to enter into the United States illegally. And so Biden is doing nothing but sowing chaos, which is exactly why Republicans in the United States House of Representatives need to put the pedal to the metal to make sure that they stop any type of program like this by the Biden administration.
You know, Governor, you mentioned this period is one that tends to be slower. Now, we know already in December, for the total month, there were a record number of encounters, 251,487. Do you then suppose that number, when the January numbers are tallied, in the aggregate will also be smaller?
We'll see. Again, there's so many asterisks involved because, as was reported, which is accurate, and that is there are so many gotaways that are not reported in the official numbers issued by the federal government.
How many of these, Governor, are influenced by this deal we have with Mexico to deal with asylum cases to the tune of adjudicating them on their side of the border to the tune of about 30,000 a month? It might be too early to start digesting this or tabulating this, but what do you think?
So it is too early. As that program goes into place, is my analysis and the analysis of others, that is actually going to increase the number of people coming across the border. The reason is because the Biden administration is basically granting parolee status to these people who are coming across the border illegally. And all that will do is to spur even more people to rush the border, thinking that they too will get parolee status. But to be clear, what the Biden administration is doing is flat out contrary to federal law. Federal law does not allow this mass parolee process. It requires any president, executive branch to issue parole on only a case-by-case basis. And so the state of Texas, we filed a lawsuit to put a stop to this program by the Biden administration because it is clearly, unequivocally against the law.
You know, Governor, if you don't mind my going back to the president's visit at the border and his initial meeting with you, I believe, at the airport. And it strikes me as that was a limited meeting. And after that, I think you gave him a letter to explain what was going on. He claimed not to have read it hours later. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. First, to be clear, that was the 8th letter that I've sent to the president about the border. I have received no response whatsoever. But to make sure that he knew what was in the letter, you showed on your show and other shows a period of time when I was visiting with him there at the El Paso airport. And I wanted to make sure he knew there was one key component of that letter. I have 5 bullet points in that letter that he can ensure that he uses current law, not new law, but current law to enforce the border to stop illegal immigration from occurring. And I said it's time for you as President of the United States to step up and do your job and enforce these laws that already exist to stop the illegal flow of people coming across our border.
So it looked like a single page, Governor. So there wasn't much to it. I'm not saying not much substantively to it. I didn't mean it like that. But that it was a quick read. Anyone could read that quickly. And hours later, we're told that the president still had not. What did you make of that?
Right. So we purposefully put it on one page to make sure it wasn't a long document that would be long and complicated for him to read. I talked to the first couple of paragraphs about the chaos that he's caused in the country and in Texas, and about the ways that he's violated his oath of office and the Constitution, and then I made those 5 points about what he needs to do. And he's just ignoring all of this and federal law and imposing his own will and policies, which are open border policies, allowing these people to come in from more than 140 countries across the globe.
As you know, many of your critics, Governor, including those in the White House, said it was a political stunt. What you did with the letter and all was a political stunt. What do you think of that?
So because I had previously sent him 7 letters and got no response, I figured I had to be there in person to hand him the 8th letter to try to get a response from him. He did say at the time that he would, try to work with us, but of course we've heard nothing from him. And so the only thing that is a stunt is what the president is doing to allow people to come into the United States contrary to United States law with no accountability for the president.
So I know you're in a wheelchair, sir, and you've done a very effective job as governor dealing with that and now entering your 3rd term. Was there any understanding that because of that, you wouldn't be able to actually tour the border with the president? There are a lot of paved areas where I think that could have been accommodated. Who decided that that meeting at the airport would be it?
The Biden administration. To be clear, the Biden administration had announced days before my meeting with him that they were going to El Paso. But it wasn't until late the night before he arrived that they sent an email to a lower-level person in my administration that got up to my chief of staff to invite me to meet the president at the tarmac at the airport with no invitation to do anything else with him. Listen, I've been with the former president of the United States, President Trump, on the border. And as governor, I've been on every component of the border. So I can get around on rocks, on roads, on dirt, whatever the case may be. So there was nothing stopping the president from including me with him other than the fact he did not want to detract from his message. Remember this last thing, Neil, and that is El Paso, at the instruction of the Biden administration, completely cleaned up all of the migrants who were sleeping on the streets in El Paso to sanitize
Who did
it
that?
so the president would not see anything out of place.
Who did
So
that?
it was the Border Patrol. It was the Border Patrol who were asked to do that. The President of the United States took Border Patrol off the border to clean up the streets of El Paso.
Got it. Real quickly, so your name keeps coming up in a growing list of potential Republican governors who might entertain a White House run. So I thought while I had you here and you were a captive audience, you would answer that one way or the other. Are you going to run for president?
Neil, I'm focused on one thing, and that's being governor of the great state of Texas.
All right, because the governor of New Hampshire said the same thing, just reelected governor in the great state of New Hampshire. I've heard that out of Governor Kemp in Georgia, reelected, loves the great state of Georgia. They all kind of have that in common, and then they run. I'm not saying they are. Is it fair to say that you want to and prefer to stay in Texas for these next 4 years rather than make a White House run?
So the only accurate thing to say, Neil, is that my focus is only on leading the great state of Texas.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.